At one point in time, it seemed like Justin Bieber had the world in his hands. Millions of fans, chart-topping hits, and a career most artists could only dream of, but while his rise to fame seemed like every teen's Hollywood dream, his fall from grace was a full-blown nightmare, one that left scars deeper than time could ever heal, because behind the smiles and all the record-breaking hits, awards, and accolades was a man being chewed up and spat out by the very industry that made him. And if some fans are to be believed, the woman he married, when Justin hooked up with Hailey Baldwin in 2018. Just a few months after officially cutting off his 8-year-long on and off relationship with Selena Gomez. The internet was split right down the middle, and for very obvious reasons besides the insane stalker allegations hanging over Hailey's head and the fact that Justin had built a reputation for being a druggie. He was now public enemy number one for breaking the heart of a Disney fan favorite. But even with all of the hate, no one would have ever thought that the same kid who was lighting up the charts even before turning 18 would someday be on the verge of losing his mind. But how exactly did we get here? Well, today we're going to take a closer look into the turbulent life of one of the biggest pop stars to ever live, and find out exactly what caused the dark decline of Justin Bieber.
Bro, I was like dying. My security and stuff were coming into the room at night to check my pulse. Like, people don't know how serious it got. Like, it was legit crazy scary. I was waking up in the morning and the first thing I was doing is popping pills and smoking a blunt and starting my day.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
Breaking news right now, Justin Bieber, the singer and teen heartthrob, arrested.
Mr. Bieber, you are charged with the following: DUI, alcohol or drugs, resisting without violence, and driving with an expired driver's license.
There was a time where I was sipping lean, I was popping pills, I was doing Molly, shrooms, everything, and
we must examine how this fairy tale began and why it was never truly as sweet as it is. Appeared in 2007 in order to truly comprehend how dark things got. Justin started posting videos of himself performing popular song covers on YouTube, usually from his living room and on stage at local talent shows. However, it didn't take long for those videos to gain popularity and draw in viewers who could spot talent. One such viewer was marketing executive and talent manager Scooter Braun, who had actually stumbled upon one of Justin's videos and was immediately captivated by the voice.
He heard that voice, he was hooked. So when I saw Justin, while everyone told me no and everyone thought I was crazy, I knew exactly what to do.
Braun found Justin through the theater where he was performing and contacted his mother, Patty, to persuade her to allow Justin to travel to Atlanta with him to meet some of the biggest names in the industry. However, the plane didn't take off right away because Patty wasn't exactly on board with sending her 13-year-old son off to the music industry, wolves. But after some persuasion from her church community, she finally gave in, and suddenly, Justin was officially on his way to becoming the most famous teenager on the planet in 2009. He became the first artist in history to have all 7 songs from his debut EP, My World, chart on the Billboard 100, with 4 of these songs even before the project was released.
So as you guys all know, I'm from a little town in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, a town of 30,000 people, and I never dreamed this day would come. My album is in stores, and I'm just so excited. You guys made my dreams come true, and like I said, I never thought this would happen, so thank you guys so much, and I really appreciate it.
All right, but even though that was amazing for a child his age, Bieber was just getting started in 2010. His song Baby became a worldwide mega hit and overtook Lady Gaga's Bad Romance as the most viewed video on YouTube for the following 10 years. Justin would have an insane career run that earned him numerous global hit singles and albums, esteemed awards like Grammys, multiple AMAs, and countless other trophies, and even several Guinness World Records. But after rolling out hit After a hit for a decade and achieving the kind of success most people can't even dream of, Justin's career came to a shocking halt in 2019. When he announced he would be taking an indefinite hiatus from music 6 months after getting married to his girlfriend Haley, it seemed like he had moved past the slump after he dropped his Justice album in 2021, which would once again top the charts and include several global hit songs such as Peaches, Holy, and Anyone. But then in 2023, instead of dropping a new project, the news would drop that Justin was actually selling all the rights of his entire back catalog. Now, this by itself seems quite normal these days, as many artists have seemingly calculated that they'll end up actually making more money by investing the hundreds of millions that they would make from such deals rather than collecting their royalties year after year. But with Justin, there seemed to be much more going on, because behind the scenes he wasn't just stepping away from the fame, he was visibly falling apart. One of the biggest red flags has been Justin's physical appearance, which has people genuinely worried for his health. And between the sunken cheeks, the half-awake eyes, and that hole just rolled out of a dumpster behind a yoga studio vibe, it was hard not to be. But for many fans, the things really hit a new level of troubling when he showed up to one of Haley's skincare pop-ups looking like this.
This is the same guy who once had...
This is the same guy who used to make teenage girls scream at the sight of him. Now, if he hadn't slept for 3 years, he would look like Pete Davidson. However, for those who had been watching, the signs of Justin's mental decline had been present for years before Haley even entered the picture. And while on the surface it seems like a classic case of the consequences of addiction, the reality is much darker than you might imagine. Justin's rise to fame at such a young age exposed him to the pressures and expectations that came with that life. But on top of that pressure, he also had to deal with something even more harmful: being surrounded by adults in Hollywood who couldn't keep their hands to Jenny McCarthy, 40, grabbed Justin, who was barely 18, by the neck, planted one on him, have to announcing him as the winner of the Pop Rock Album of the Year at the 2012 Music Awards. This made Justin and everyone else in the room visibly uncomfortable, and even though McCarthy later attempted to play it off as a joke in an interview, it didn't make it any less strange. If anything, it made the moment even more unsettling.
Great, I just got to neck Justin Bieber and grab his butt.
I saw that you totally, it was like a full-on almost makeout session.
A little cougar scary.
Yeah.
But I took the opportunity in the window, considering I'll never get to do it again, and kind of molested him.
But Jenny...
However, Jenny wasn't the only celebrity to cross the line with a young Justin. At just 16, he was already receiving treatment that no teen should have to go through, especially not in front of cameras and live audiences. For example, James Corden attempted to appear to flirt with Justin at the 2011 Brit Awards.
Seemingly flirt with Justin during the Brit Awards in 2011.
You smell amazing. How old are you?
Thank you.
I don't ever remember smelling that good at 16. That was bad.
Yeah.
Wow, look at your eyes.
Additionally, by the time he was 18, Katy Perry was openly grabbing Justin's cheeks during a meet and greet at the Capitol FM Summertime Ball. And that's not even counting the innumerable interviews in which grown adults who really ought to have known better asked Justin offensive and sexually suggestive questions while he was still a teenager.
My parents never gave me this sock. Okay. So why don't you give me this sock?
I feel uncomfortable right now.
Oh.
Why do you want to know this stuff from a 15-year-old boy? That's pretty weird.
Now, if they didn't see anything wrong with sexualizing a child so openly, it really makes you wonder what might have been going on behind the scenes. Many people dismissed it as harmless banter or simply wrote it off as the cost of fame. But in actuality, Justin Bieber's continuous objectification and sexual harassment as a young man would probably have a lasting impact on him as the world watched every move he made, in the midst of chaos and fame. There wasn't really anyone supporting him. Not even his mother. This kind of pressure doesn't just go away. It builds up and eventually spills over. Just like many before him, Justin found an escape in the same thing that's ruined the lives of some of the brightest stars in Hollywood: drugs. He was trying to quiet everything down: the judgment, the expectations, the pain from the abuse that he hadn't even begun to process. Once he started slipping and sipping, the public was quick to notice. In 2013, people got their first real glimpse of a different Justin Bieber, when a photo of him holding a blunt hit the internet for the fans who still saw him as the squeaky clean heartthrob. It felt like a shock to the system, and for the critics, it was exactly the proof they'd been waiting for, that Justin was going to be yet another young star crashing out under the weight of his own fame. And sadly, they weren't necessarily wrong, because over the years that followed, Justin's substance abuse would make him somewhat of a regular in police reports. In 2014 alone, he got arrested multiple times, including one infamous night in Miami for allegedly driving under the influence, driving with an expired license, and resisting arrest. He would admit to drinking, smoking, and popping prescription pills, and ended up spending around 10 hours in a cell before getting out on a $2,500 bond. And when the toxicology report dropped, it was confirmed that he had THC and Xanax in his system, and from there, things would only go even further downhill. From weed and Sean's, he would turn to Molly and lean. And for those that aren't in the hip-hop world, lean is basically prescription cough syrup containing both opiate codeine and vasopressant promethazine, often mixed with soda and hard candy for flavor. An expensive and arguably prestigious drink in hip-hop circles. And while it might sound like a little bit of harmless fun, the reality is Leanne has built a solid reputation for ruining lives and triggering crash outs much faster than regular fame could. Around this time, Justin was commonly seen hanging around rappers like Lil Wayne, a known lean aficionado, which likely didn't help with Justin's budding addiction issues, and several sources close to Justin would report seeing him, quote, zonked out on multiple occasions around this time. And by the time the addiction really had him in the chokehold, his head was so messed up that his own security had to regularly check if he was still breathing at night, just to make sure he hadn't OD'd in his sleep. Now, in one of the most wild turn of events, in April of 2014, pharmaceutical company activists actually announced that they were pulling their highly popular codeine promethazine cough syrup off the market due to widespread recreational abuse, with this coming around the time that Justin Bieber was being seen frequently sitting in public, leading many people like 2 Chainz to suggest that Bieber bringing all this attention to lean is actually the reason that it got banned. Whatever the case, though, that addiction wasn't just some phase, it was a dark period that affected Justin for years to come. And sometime after this, Justin would end up making a life-changing decision, with the world reacting in shock when he announced his sudden engagement to Hailey Baldwin. So who exactly is Hailey Baldwin? And most importantly, how did she become Mrs. Bieber in the blink of an eye? Child of actor Stephen Baldwin, the least successful of the famous Baldwin brothers, and his partner graphic designer Kenya Deodato. Although Hailey Rod Baldwin grew up in these affluent circles and began modeling as a teenager, there were moments when the paparazzi didn't even recognize her in reality. Though Baldwin has never been a major celebrity in her own right,
he didn't even recognize her.
Hey, you famous too?
Hailey, how do you feel about Justin Bieber? By 2014, Hailey and Justin were running in the same social circles, primarily through their connection to Hillsong Church, the celebrity-filled mega church that later became Justin's spiritual home during some of his darkest times. And although they insisted they were just friends, the two were spotted cozying up at various events and family gatherings. But it wasn't Until 2016 that Justin and Hailey briefly dated, with Justin posting a New Year's photo of them locking lips. Now, this caught a ton of people off guard because, for starters, Hailey had been publicly bigging up Jolena a couple of years earlier, this being a nickname for Bieber's long-term relationship with his teenage sweetheart, Selena Gomez. In fact, in 2011, she made a now deleted tweet calling Justin's relationship with Selena Gomez a teenage dream, but at the time, most people charged it to teen drama, especially because the relationship was short-lived. Their breakup was so brutal that Hailey later described it as a very dramatic excommunication, and for the next year or so, Justin rekindled things with Selena, while Hailey reportedly went on to date Shawn Mendes. But in 2018, that's when things really got interesting, or suspicious, depending on who you ask. Because in June that year, Justin was spotted with Hailey at a church conference. By July, they were engaged, and by September, they were legally married in a New York courthouse. Too many fans of Justin, this timeline felt like an emotional whiplash. In real time, given that he had just spent 8 years tangled up in a roller coaster relationship with Selena, going from on again to off again to back on, back off, only to turn around and put a ring on someone else less than 3 months after their final split. And as you'd expect, the speed of this reunion to marriage pipeline raised a lot of eyebrows. Some fans wondered if Hailey had been playing the long game all along, and others just saw her as an opportunist who capitalized on Justin's emotional vulnerability after his final breakup with Selena, with gossip magazines boosting these theories by creating narratives of Hailey being a rebound girl who somehow managed to seal the deal before Justin could come to his senses. But the most concerning theory is that Hailey, intentionally or not, might have contributed to Justin's mental decline by rushing him into marriage before he was emotionally stable enough to make such a commitment fresh out of a toxic relationship. But whatever the reality, might be Hailey and Justin just kept smiling for the cameras and ignoring the noise, except there was one thing that fans just couldn't ignore. What exactly was Selena thinking following his last split from Selena? Justin and Hailey dated so soon that it caused a rift within the pop culture squad. Selena versus the Team, for example, in October 2019. Selena released her song, Love You to Love Me, which contained lyrics widely interpreted as being about Justin's quick pivot to Hailey. Lines like, "In 2 months you replaced us, like it was easy," seemed to directly reference the timeline of Justin and Hailey's relationship hours after the song's release. Hailey became the New Bloods versus Crips, and for years, she has had to fight a hard battle against the perception that she stole Justin from Selena. Despite both women claiming there is no beef between them, their fans have kept the feud going with remarkable dedication. On her Instagram story, Hailey would share a screenshot of Summer Walker's song, I'll Kill You. Although Hailey claimed that this was all that happened, fans didn't buy it, and it became evident over time why. In 2023, things reached a breaking point when Selena joked on TikTok about having unintentionally over-laminated her eyebrows. Shortly after, Kylie Jenner, a close friend of Hailey's, shared an Instagram story with a close-up of her eyebrows captioned, "This was an accident." As if the drama surrounding Selena wasn't enough, Hailey also found herself embroiled in a feud with Taylor Swift, Selena's best friend, who was also friends with Justin before he threw Selena under the bus. Kylie denied that any shade was intended, but both of them zoomed in on their eyebrows in a screenshot of their video call that was later posted. Selena seemed to agree that the damage was done, and Hailey would lose over 1 million followers, while Selena gained over 12 million and became the most followed woman on the platform. This web of celebrity feuds may appear trivial at first glance, but to the majority, it was obvious that Hailey had repeatedly placed herself against the women who were more important to Justin than she was. Whether this was done on purpose to distance themselves or was just the result of natural tensions is debatable, but what was not was that behind all the public displays of affection, Justin and Hailey's relationship was very different from the picture-perfect narrative they were trying to promote, and it was only a matter of time until it started to spill into the public eye, because by this point the cracks weren't just in the headlines. They were written all over Justin's face. And despite their best efforts to smile, for the cameras, the mask was finally coming off in his 2021 GQ interview. Justin dropped what might be the understatement of the century when he admitted that the first year of marriage was difficult because of his built-in trauma. Difficult wouldn't even begin to cover what was seemingly going down behind closed doors. And the crazy part is that no one noticed until the images of his infamous public crying sessions began to pop up, with Justin being photographed numerous times having full-on emotional breakdowns all over the city. Hailey would argue that these were just therapeutic moments with his supportive wife helping him to process these emotions. And maybe that is true. Maybe it was therapeutic. But when a grown man's trauma spills out in broad daylight like that, is usually a symptom of something very deep, very dark, and negative. It's easy to look at him now and forget how long the damage had been piling up. But again, this is the same kid who grew up with the world watching, and unfortunately, touching that trauma didn't disappear. It just aged with him quietly until it couldn't anymore. What followed were the denials. For years, these two have been claiming that everything is fine in their relationship. Most people aren't buying the PR spin. One headline would raise a lot of eyebrows when Hailey abruptly unfollowed Justin. After he went live on Instagram, showing off his abs and aggressively rapping along to a new song that fans assumed was a jab at Selena, who had just released an album with her fiancé, Benny Blanco. Hailey would later claim that the unfollowing was a glitch, but the timing certainly had people wondering, given the seeming turn Justin's life had taken. To be fair to Hailey, things were already quite dark before she came along. Not to mention the toll that Justin's own health issues have taken, especially after he was diagnosed with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome in 2022.
I have this syndrome called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome.
Some people are hoping that now that they have a child together, fatherhood will help Justin find the peace he has been seeking. But when your life is such a chaotic, paparazzi-filled mess, and you grow up in such a traumatizing industry as a child star, it's to get past the scars of the past. Although Justin is an amazing artist, it seems like he would prefer to forget and move on from his past to get to where he is in life. Who knows if it's his past or this sudden relationship that has caused his mental decline? Hopefully, he finds himself in a positive place where he can feel content and hopefully resume creating quality art. But if he chooses to leave the industry, I think many of us will understand.